Good morning. I'm Richard Rose, President of Atlanta branch of the NAACP. Thank you all for coming out. We got a message this morning. Georgia, the world is watching you. Now today is because of a horrific video of the extrajudicial killing of Ahmaud Arbery, known only because of the plethora of handheld communication and image capturing devices that we know as cell phones. Without this technology, the world would not know about other racially tinged executions such as Walter Scott, Eric Garner. Sadly, there are other deaths at the hands of law enforcement that are not so documented. In the case of Eric Garner, we have seen that even with video capturing, the prosecution of killers is not a guarantee in America where the victim is African American. Gerald Griggs, first vice president of the Atlanta NAACP, will come now and talk about other cases in Fulton County and Georgia where families have not been graced with a resolution in our system of justice.
Thank you and good morning. And I want to set the occasion here in Georgia. Georgia has a history of racial violence, a history of police violence, and there are certain names that now Ahmaud Arbery has joined the cadre of individuals who've fallen victim. People like Veltavius Griggs, people like Jimmy Atchison, people like Katherine Johnston, people like Kane Rogers, people like Oscar Kane, just to name a few. And the issue is an issue of accountability. And we have to hold this community, the powerful, accountable for that accountability. It started a long time ago, not just in Brunswick, but now Brunswick is the focus for the change that needs to happen in Georgia and the world. So we stand shoulder to shoulder, not only with the Arbery family, but all the other families, because we are not going to say that this is a one-off. This is standard practice in Georgia. It's standard practice for the GBI to investigate, and then we wait years upon years upon years. Sometimes there's justice, like in Anthony Hill or Gregory Towns. Sometimes there's not justice. We want to make sure that Georgia gets this right. That's why the NAACP is standing shoulder to shoulder with this family, with their attorneys, and with the community. But we also want everyone to know that we will elevate the names of the other victims so that not one more injustice happens in this state. So the occasion is now, Georgia has a brutality problem. This is not a one-off. In Atlanta, Georgia, there are cases that are sitting on the prosecutor's desk. In Gwinnett County, there are cases that are sitting on the prosecutor's desk. And now in Glynn County, there is a case sitting on the prosecutor's desk. So we, the NAACP, are saying that we are here, shoulder to shoulder with this family, and we will get justice.
Thank you. The NAACP was founded in 1909 in New York City, but Atlanta is where the chief visionary of the NAACP, W.E.B. Du Bois, lived, taught, and published. The initial mission objectives of the NAACP were education, voting rights, economic opportunity, and equal justice. Neither of these have been fully realized even 111 years since the founding of the NAACP and 155 years since the end of America's most bloody war fought chiefly to maintain enslavement in perpetuity based on race. The record of oppression is well documented. Badged law enforcement and judicial robing by day and white hooded hooligans by night. They terrorized black communities to discourage voting and destroyed the audacity of hope embedded in farms and businesses built against all odds by descendants of chattel slavery that dared to compete with those whose privilege were being born white. That terror remains in much of our communities, passed down to generation after generation. Much like the presumption of white supremacy, aided by Confederate symbolism adopted by federal, state, and local governments. Extrajudicial killings are a jolt to the guarantees of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They destroy the hope of too many. Now I bring Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley, representing the concerned black clergy and a veteran community activist. Come and speak to us, Dr. Durley.
Good morning. This is the day that the concerned black clergy of metropolitan Atlanta will join forces with the NAACP and others around the state of Georgia to speak out against this travesty. I never thought that the faith community would go through this again. I started in the movement in 1960 with Andy and John and all, but we've come back to this. I'm convinced now more than ever we are in a moral, ethical war. And the concerned black clergy and other faith alliances, the Jewish community, the Muslim community, we're now coming back together as we did once in the 60s because the time is right to do right. This is an atrocity, and we always felt that voting was the issue. We spent a lot of time registering people to vote and getting the census out so that equal justice could occur. But obviously we've seen that this nation and parts of this nation has hijacked the justice system. It was an immoral act. It was an unethical act, what occurred down there in Brunswick. So now the faith community, one of the worst things that could have happened, and maybe the best thing that could have happened, the faith community, the African-American civil rights community is joining forces once again, as we did with whites and blacks and old and young and Jews and Gentiles, and could all come together. We are now one force to speak out against what happened down there in that case. We will not back up, we will not bend, we will not break, but more importantly, we're going to make sure that we all get out and vote these people out. We're demanding that the DAs down in Brunswick, if they're not voted out, then we need to pull them out, kick them out, or run them out. One of the reasons that we're here today with the NAACP is to show the unification. That's what will make the difference. That will make the difference not only for young black boys, but all of the injustices that are held up against people now because of this crooked regime that's in office. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Durley. As he mentioned, elections have consequences, and the census is consequential to elections. We want to urge all people across America, black, white, Native American, Asian, young, old, please respond to your census because it sets the tone, it decides who is in what congressional district or council district or commission district. It is very vital to our American life. Embedded in the Constitution, this is an activity that we must participate in. Now I'd like to bring a media star who has built himself as a man of credibility. You might see him on MSNBC, on radio every day, on TV. Rashad Ritchie, would you please come to us?
Thank you, sir. All right, so I talk for a living, so I won't be long. When this case first came to my attention, people were calling it a modern-day lynching. And I thought that language may be somewhat sensational, but I understood the sentiment. But as a researcher, as a professor, I decided to look up the definition of lynching, the legal definition, as well as the operational definition. And nowhere in the definition of lynching is the word hanging included. Lynching simply means, by definition, that a mob is organized in order to pursue a suspect and utilize extrajudicial means in order to execute them. That's all lynching means. Typically, there's a public display. of that lynching. We recently found out that another family member posted the dead, bloody body of Ahmaud Arbery on Snapchat, a public display. What we have also seen in this case is the extraordinary power of the media and how the media, through doing something very simple, just telling the truth of the story, can transform not only the narrative, but transform what justice looks like. And because of that, I will continue, obviously, to utilize my voice on WAOK and V103. But more than that, we will now partner with the NAACP and other members of the coalition at Rolling Out Magazine, which has a national readership of 2.2 million people. We will partner as a publication to highlight these injustices in Georgia, one family at a time. There's already a backlog. We will work with the NAACP and the attorneys on highlighting those stories and bringing those stories to the forefront of our nation. What we have learned is that our nation responded in a way that signifies that we are more of a just community than an unjust community. So I stand proudly announcing the partnership between Rolling Out and the NAACP to highlight these stories that should have been highlighted years ago. Thank you. And so, as you know, the NAACP has been at the forefront of many of the past lynching cases, many of the current lynching cases, and we are honored to stand with two titans of the legal community who are representing the family of Ahmaud Arbery. Chris Stewart is one of the most preeminent lawyers in the country when it comes to these type of cases. He's handled the Walter Scott case, he handled the Alton Sterling case, and now he's partnered with my good friend Lee Merritt, who is one of the most essential and preeminent voices in this space for years. And so when the call came down, I could think of no two greater lawyers than to take this case and to be the modern Thurgood Marshalls of this generation. So I would like to introduce Lee Merritt and Chris Stewart, who are the attorneys for the mother of Ahmaud Arbery. They would have some brief remarks.
Good morning. First, I want to thank the NAACP for standing with this family. Long before I was involved, long before Chris Stewart was involved, this family received the support of the local NAACP and the national legal apparatus. This organization has been a safeguard for the African American communities, is, as they often say, the oldest and the boldest civil rights organization in the history of this country. And their partnership with this family has meant a great deal, especially when they started listening before the video was released. They started listening before anybody else cared. They started listening when it was just Wanda Cooper and Marcus Arbery fighting for justice for their child and trying to get the world's attention. So thank you all so very much. It means the world to this family. Ms. Cooper, who would love to be here herself, sends her great gratitude that you all continue to stand with her and fight alongside of her. A lot of people have asked, why are organizations like the NAACP involved in a private killing? This was an unfortunate circumstance that the national media has blown out of proportion, that race was not involved. Just because the assailants were white and the victim was black, that didn't mean that they attacked him because he was black, but they suspected him of a crime. We often hear that in the black community. We are often told that we are unfairly imputing race on a narrative, that we are race baiting. It is important to know what each of the previous speakers representing this great organization said ahead of me, that this is not constrained to the events of February 23rd. The injustice, the greatest injustice in this case was not only the brutal murder of Ahmaud Arbery, but the response by the legal apparatus of South Georgia. They responded as if his life didn't matter. And in George Barnhill, the district attorney who first really got involved with this case. In his words, he explained why. And it was because Ahmaud Arbery was black. He said specifically in a letter to the Attorney General of Georgia that Ahmaud Arbery was no stranger to the criminal justice system. That his family and friends were no stranger to the criminal justice system. And in common parlance, what the American culture has started to do, they realized it was unpopular to kill people because they're black. So instead, they started calling them criminals. Criminal is the new black. And if you can impute criminality on the mundane, like jogging down the street, then you can justify a murder. Yesterday, one of the attorneys for one of the suspects in this case, William Bryan, stood in front of the national media, and he tried to make his client the victim. It boggles the mind how he was able to make the jump to say that his client, and I quote, was unarmed and afraid after watching the video that his client took of Ahmaud Arbery as they pursued him through the Centilla Shores community. The reason he was able to make that mental jump is because he doesn't see race. And people in this culture today have decided that that is a good thing, not to see race. We want you to see the race of Ahmaud Arbery. We want you to see the blackness, and we want you to see when things like this happen over and over and over again, it's happening to black people. And when it's justified, when a young woman is playing video games with her nephew at home and she leaves the door open, and they call her a criminal and they go in and shoot her to death in Fort Worth, Texas, we want you to see the race issue. And we want you to see why her playing video games with her nephew was seen as criminal. It was because of her blackness, that she was living in a black community. When Botham Jean was shot to death in his home eating a bowl of ice cream, the woman who came into his home, into his place, said that he was a criminal. She suspected that he was a criminal, and she used that to shoot him to death. And people said, where was race in this case? Criminal is the new black. And over again, the black community has been called criminals. Barbecuing, criminals walking down the street, criminals jogging. Ahmaud Arbery has been in the media today. They continue to release new images attempting to criminalize Ahmaud Arbery, the victim, when the criminals remain William Bryan, Gregory McMichael, and Travis McMichael. And so I thank this organization on behalf of this family for seeing Ahmaud Arbery as the victim that he is, and calling the criminals, the people who murdered a jogger on video, what they are. And I'm going to turn this conversation over to my esteemed colleague, Chris Stewart. Thank you.
I'm attorney Chris Stewart, along with Lee Merritt, representing this family. And all too often, African Americans only receive justice by video. In Walter Scott, when I handled that, the immediate media response given by the police department was that he attacked the officer and that he shot him while they were fighting over his taser. But then the truth came out because of the video that we found. All too often, African Americans get justice by video. And that is not just immoral and improper and illegal. That is not justice. Why is it wrong for a family to demand justice when their child has been shot by a shotgun unarmed? Why is it wrong for a family to demand justice when they find out that a police officer was meddling in this case and texting residents? Why is it wrong for a family to demand justice when they find out the DAs were meddling in the case where they were legally not supposed to be involved? District Attorney Barnhill should have recused himself the second he received that phone call. He knows where his son works. He knows his son probably had interactions with that investigator, yet he took it. Yet he attempted to drive the final nail in a coffin that wasn't even buried yet. And he showed it in his letters and his emails. How is there not outrage by not just African Americans, but everybody in Georgia? His letter dripped with hate and bias and injustice. He couldn't find enough dirt on Ahmaud, so he began attacking his family, a district attorney whose job is to prosecute, not defend criminals. But yet we all would have moved on. Yet we all wouldn't have questioned the actions of these district attorneys. So yes, we have gotten step one of justice by getting the McMichaels arrested, but we have not reached 2 or 3 yet. It is an injustice and an embarrassment for whatever color you are in this state if these people remain in office with the power to arrest all of you watching TV right now and make it go away if they want to. So we're happy investigations have opened, and we're happy that people are being looked into, but there must be some type of results. We were not the first people to accuse Roddy of being involved. That was the McMichaels. In the police report, they said Roddy blocked him off. They said he took part in this chase. We did not attack him or accuse him of anything. His co-conspirators did. So don't blame us when the McMichaels started this and put you in the situation. If Lee robbed a bank and said Chris Stewart took part, and the police come and interview me and find a video that not only was I there, but I was filming the bank robbery, I would be arrested, and it would be up to my lawyers to prove I was innocent. We just asked for justice. Why is that so wrong? Why is that so racially charged? Because we're black. Why can't we just get justice like everybody else? And that's what the NAACP has been fighting for all these years, and that's what people like me and Lee Merritt, who is leading this charge, and I'm backing him up, are just trying to get for this family. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much. We have been joined by the mayor of this illustrious city, Dina Holiday Ingram. Would mind if she would say a few words, because there's no point like East Point.
Good morning. Welcome to East Point, where I say there's no point like East Point, but unfortunately today we're here because Ahmaud Arbery, an African-American male, 25 years old, decided to take a jog, and some people, 2 people, the McMichaels, decided that he no longer deserved to live. It's unfortunate that in 2020, as African Americans, we are still faced with being judged by the color of our skin and not the content of our character. It's unfortunate that in 2020, we're still having gatherings after another life has been lost at the hands of hatred, at the hands of bigotry, in a time where we have a federal government that encourages people and says that they're good people when their motives and their actions are motivated and are driven by hate. It's unfortunate that in 2020, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I have to wonder, as she grows up in this country, will we really overcome? Thanks to the hard work of the NAACP Atlanta branch here in East Point and across this country, we continue to fight. I was trained as a lawyer, as a social engineer at the Howard University School of Law, like Attorney Stewart. And we were charged to go out in our community and every day stand up and speak to injustice. Because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And today I stand. I stand with the Arbery family. I stand with the community. I stand with the NAACP. I stand with my colleagues as lawyers to say that we will continue to fight injustice. While some might feel we're sick and tired of being tired, today we can't be tired. We must continue to galvanize. We must continue to mobilize. But most importantly, we must vote. The DA and all these other people who are in these elected offices, it is because people vote for them or choose not to vote. Early voting started yesterday. Absentee ballot, voting by mail. I mean, there are a number of ways to vote. People died so that we could vote. And so while we stand here today and, you know, the cover up that lasted so long, and they didn't get arrested because they committed the crimes, they got arrested because we saw the video, right? But if we didn't see the video, those people who were elected to serve in office would still be serving, and and the McMichaels would still be at home enjoying life that they decided they would take from Ahmaud Arbery. So we must vote. President Obama said, don't boo, vote. I encourage everyone to vote. These things must change. There are different levels of this fight. There is definitely the one that will happen in the courts, but there is one that happens every day in our communities when we refuse to stand up, when we refuse to speak out, and when we refuse to call what is unjust. And so, my call to action today is, as we're praying and supporting and lifting up and praying for strength and courage for the Arbery family and these valiant lawyers who will lead this charge, in the NAACP and all the members and people of the community who will fight, that we all feel that very sense of urgency to vote, and to vote often, and to vote in every election, because it's not just one thing that's going to get us and help us overcome. It's all of us working together. It's the system working together. It's the community working together. Teamwork makes the dream work, and unfortunately in 2020, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream is still a dream that we haven't fulfilled or seen. So I will keep praying, I will keep fighting, and I will keep standing, and I will keep speaking, so that my daughter, who's 10, can, and hopefully I, as long as I'm around, will be able to truly see a society where people of African American descent are not judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character, and that we actually will overcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I were the father of a promising blue chip football player, but I'm not, and from California, Oregon, and New York, I would encourage him to resist the entreaties of University of Georgia and other Georgia colleges. Why be subjected to unwarranted suspicion and unseen danger in Georgia? Why be subject to a racial climate in a state that celebrates the largest shrine to white supremacy in the history of the world at Stone Mountain? Dr. King said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I say that injustice anywhere is a call to action everywhere. All races, all religions, all ethnicities in America, supposedly the land of the free and home of the brave, or something thereabouts. But what we know is America has been home to injustice. Just want to remind Georgia, the world is watching you. What will Georgia show them? We'll take questions now. Thank you for your attendance. Sure. Can't hear you. Okay. Okay.
You mentioned that a criminal history was referenced as some sort of justification for Mr. Arbery's death. Could you talk about that video that came out overnight showing officers attempting to tase him when he said he was waiting for work? What's your response to
It's the same, that we see a common process in almost every one of these cases. You have a victim shot dead in the streets, and give it a few days, and suddenly you start seeing images of that victim cast in a light as a criminal. What we have not seen in the media at all is a thorough review of the history of the McMichaels, the men who are actually in jail today because of their actions for the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. What we have not discussed publicly for almost the duration of the time that this case has been in the media is the rancid background of Gregory McMichael, of his troubled tenure as a law enforcement officer in that community, as his cooperation with the local law enforcement community even as he retired, that really set this entire murder into process. We have not spent a sufficient amount of time actually focusing on the murderers here. Ahmaud was stopped in a park minding his own business one day. And we see images there, we've seen police reports, and he was committing no crime. But for whatever reason, whoever's releasing this information, that's where they want the focus of the media to be. We're not going to play that game. We're going to keep the focus where it belongs, on the men, William Bryan, Gregory McMichael, and Travis McMichael, who chased, stalked, and murdered Ahmaud Arbery. And I'm sorry, I don't want to make this about this case. I know you are instructed. Okay, please.
Did Brian, Mr. Arbery's mother, ever speak to her son about that incident in the park? What did he say about it?
And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I am not going to play that game on behalf of this family. It was an incident in the park where he did not, where he was honestly brutalized by law enforcement, where he was targeted for no apparent reason other than what we said. The same reason that Ahmaud Arbery was killed was the same reason he was stopped in that park. It was the criminalization of blackness itself. They saw a black man alone in the park and said, you know what, this appears suspicious. Dozens of people entered the property in Satilla Shores. White people, black people, day, night, young people, old people. Only the men who were black who entered that property were criminalized. We've only seen text message exchange and a focused on their actions, although everybody in that community entered that property because it was under construction. And so I am going to stay away from the tendency to focus our attention on the victim. He's dead and gone. He's not here to defend himself. I don't know if he spoke with his mom about it because he was shot 3 times at close range with a shotgun by Travis McMichael. And so he can't talk about it anymore. He's been silenced. I'm sorry, please.
We've seen 32 seconds of the video that Brian shot. Could you tell us more, because this is a longer video with pursuing the Ahmaud.
Oh.
Tell us more about the longer version of the video and exactly what it shows in this video in connection to the entire thing.
You know what? You want to wrap it up? Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. We'll take some additional questions after this, but I don't want to take over the purpose of this particular meeting, which is to highlight the role that this organization has played in this case, and to discuss which ways we're going to continue to partner in the future. But we will be available for questions afterwards. Okay.
So again, we're here to emphasize that Ahmaud Arbery is not a one-off situation. This is not unique. It's not unique in Georgia, and it's not unique in America. So the details of this case, we have plenty of time for that. But any other questions, except for examination of what we've already seen, we'll take them, but not into detail and analyzing the evidence, the incomplete evidence that's already out there, because it's incomplete. We don't feel confident. In Fulton County, we have the district attorney here has created a conviction integrity unit, a panel on which I serve, to look at over sentencing, innocent people being sentenced because of police misconduct. Clearly, there's an indication of law enforcement misconduct from these two DAs, but they are not alone. We hope that America, Georgia, should recognize its inherent racism, from the governor's mansion, from Chatsworth to St. Mary's, from Carrollton to Augusta, all over this state. And let's take a real look and try to find justice and correct the wrongs that have been meted out against black men and women for hundreds of years. That's what we hope to happen. Are we hopeful? No, but we will keep agitating and advocating for that.
Sir, have you or anybody from the
We take her and I'll get you.
have you or anybody from the NAACP reached out to or spoken to anybody from the DA's office or from the GBI?
The NAACP has not. We won't be doing that. Yes, sir.
Can you speak about the increase of enrollment through the NAACP since the death of Ahmaud Arbery, and what do people need to do if they want to join the organization at this point?
So the Atlanta NAACP, go to our website, naacpatlanta.org. You can join, you can donate. The struggle is not over, as we can see. America still has not recognized or extended its true creed to people of African descent and other people of color. And so, yes, the NAACP, I wish was not needed. I wished our work was done, but it is not done, and it takes resources and participation in order to do that. As soon as we finish here, we have to go back to get ready to continue to encourage people to vote, to encourage people to respond to the census. That's the kind of work we do day in and day out with limited resources, limited staff, but we do the best we can. Thank you for your question.
Mr. Rose,
Yes, sir.
what role does the local NAACP or the local Georgia play in furthering this state to get it to where it is now?
Well, they reached out to the family early on and continued to advocate and agitate on behalf in coordination with the family. I don't have other details beyond that, but they were involved from day one or two.
You know what they did?
I don't. I can't recount all the steps they took. Oh, okay.
The local NAACP was responsible for amplifying the voice of the family. Wanda Cooper and Marcus Arbery, they were one of the first people to meet with this family. They were one of the first people to get in front of national voices like Reverend Al Sharpton and MSNBC, who began to cover this story long before anyone else did, because there was no video. They covered it because they cared about it, and it made national news prior to the release of that video because of the work of local and national NAACP members.
Other questions? All right, thank you so much. If there are no other questions, we appreciate your time, appreciate your attendance. Thank you so very much.